Hey everybody, welcome in this week. Who is the champ? I am Chris Helms, your host, and man, we're here to talk about a lot of local wrestling, independent wrestlers, and also some referees. So let's go ahead and just jump right in. Today's guest is Adam Whitten. Welcome to the show, man. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you, man. It's a pleasure to be here today.
So, let's just go ahead and jump in. We only get 30 minutes, so let's use all the time that we can do. So, recently, about a month or so ago, you actually was a referee for me for a memorial show for my mentor, the amazing Velvet. And so, meeting you there, working with you at other companies at the Southern House of Wrestling, I said, I got to bring this dude in. We had a great chat in the locker room. So, first thing is, how did you get started in the business?
Yeah, so how I got started in the business, it was actually kind of like a convoluted story. I started training like 2 years ago, technically, with the Southern House of Wrestling in Myrtle Beach. I know it's like very local. It's about a 3-hour drive. But, I went there for one of the sessions, and Fuego, our teacher, he was very welcoming and got me right in the ring. And, we started training immediately on many different things and kind of fell in love with it from there. So I would train there for once or twice a week, depending on my schedule. And eventually I made my debut as a masked wrestler. Sorry, I'm breaking kayfabe here, but it's relatively obvious. I didn't break a secret. I wrestle under a moniker called the Masked Man Guy.
I remember that.
Yeah, which is it's a tradition. I didn't come up with a character. It was actually Fuego's original character.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was kind of like a thing that he would tell the story better, but he auditioned for Tough Enough as a child, and he wore the mask, and he submitted his audition tape. Is the masked man guy, I will beat you down, I will throw you over the top rope, and I will fly, stuff like that. And he magically got in. And that's amazing. Except one thing. He was 12 years old. You can't get on Tough Enough when you're 12 years old.
No, you cannot. I just said that because I've known Fuego as long as I've been in the business. And the only thing I can think of is how to get all that hair into that hood. That's the one thing I'm wondering. But, so I remember when he first did, when one of the shows I worked with, that he did Masked Man Guy. And I'm like, what? I said, is this a typo? Who's the man guy? He goes, oh, just watch. That's this whole thing. Just watch. He didn't tell me anything about it. The music hits, and you come right out, and you start dancing. That is the one thing that I had to admit about the Southern House of Wrestling. There's a lot of dancers going on. My experience with Kiki Roberts, meeting him for the first time, that was. I'm going to get Kiki on here because I guarantee he's got some great stories to tell. But you're saying that you started off training at the Southern House of Wrestling. A lot of people don't know what the Southern House of Wrestling, especially here in Charleston. A few people know about it in Myrtle Beach. So did you start with Fuego, or were you there for Barb as well?
So I started with Fuego. I did not meet Barb, unfortunately. Based on Fuego's stories, she was a gem of a woman. She's the spiritual mascot of the Southern House of Wrestling, and it's tragic what happened. She's still with us in spirit. Every time we do a show, we kind of do a silent prayer, in honor of her.
Mm-hmm.
Because she really, based on everything, she really was the soul of this, not just facility, but the entire program as well. But I started with Fuego, and I became his illegitimate son. That's why I got the man guy gimmick from him. I remember when I first wrestled my first match as a masked man guy, people kept thinking that it's wow, Fuego's legs look great. They did not know it was me under that mask. They thought it was still Fuego in a tight bodysuit that magically slimmed him down and got him slightly whitish legs.
And at least a 6-pack. I mean, come on, if you've seen Fuego, me and him have hit the restaurants before. So, so how did you transition into being a ref? Was it just you did a lot of wrestling, you're just what, I'm ready to go into reffing, or was it just by chance that you got into it?
It was a little bit of both by chance and something I wanted to do. Thing about me is that I like to learn every aspect of the business. Mm-hmm. So for me, I enjoy doing commentary as well because I work as a professional performer. way before this, I worked as an actor, choreographer, and model. So, the divas area, like WWE, I am a diva. I am Maria Kanellis, but Filipino and male. But yeah, so I was very comfortable with that. So I just want to explore wrestling. Just happened to be the first side of it because that's the base of it. But then I started doing reffing for the matches that we had at our facility of training matches and some of our shows. And most recently, your show. And
Yeah.
thank you for having me for that one. Yeah.
We loved you having. So you talking about before getting into the business or while you're in the business doing entertainment. So the transition from being an actor, a model, you talked about the Divas era and everything where they all were models, It was all about the looks. But, we've seen you in the ring, but you're hiding your looks for one. But my question is, how does transitioning from being an actor, a model, and going into wrestling, what was the transition? Because a lot of wrestlers go from wrestling to acting or modeling. They never do it in reverse, at least on the male side.
Yeah. So it's a lot of transitioning from standing art to performance art. That's how I interpret it. So wrestling is a very physical and a very physically demanding position to be in. So one of the major things is shifting your focus. That's the big thing. You put on performance in the ring rather than on a stage or a camera, and that makes a huge difference. You're essentially doing live combat physical theater. It's Shakespeare, but with steel chairs.
Love that.
So a lot of it is basically knowing where your surroundings are, where the crowd is, where the hard cam is, and making sure that you still have that active connection with an audience while also being communicative with the other wrestlers. Make sure, because in everything else, who you work with is basically your partner in that ring. That's the most trusted person that you have in there. Second is the referee. Those two are the most essential things, and you have to keep a constant mindset of trying to maintain focus between the wrestler, the referee, the audience, and your sense of self.
And I love the way that you were just describing pretty much the role of a referee. A few weeks ago, I had Jared Fritz in here, who is an NWA referee. And, he was describing how the mentality and what it's like to actually be in the ring as a referee, because you're not just, and I learned the hard way, that I had a referee not show up. And so they're like, oh, well, Chris, your promoter's license, you have a wrestler's license. Oh, you can ref. And anyone that thinks that they watch wrestling on TV or they've actually wrestled before don't really know how to be a referee. Fuego taught me that really hard. He's like, dude, you got to come to my school. I was always walking in front of the hard camera. I was like, they couldn't see anything. So explain to me your mindset as a referee, being in the right place, pretty much seeing but not seeing anything.
Yeah. So that goes to the basis of the wrestling aspect being the most important foundation for everything. Because as you can see, WWE, every time they sign someone, they're all former wrestlers. They've had wrestling training. They understand what it means to have to be in the right position in the ring, because they've been in the trenches in that way. That's how it should be for everything, because refereeing isn't just being a referee. You are a live performer. You are in there with them. So even if it's a one-on-one match, it's a three-party system. So you have two wrestlers and the referee. They are bell to bell the most important people in that match, and the referee is still a part of that match. And the key thing is trying to make sure that you don't want to keep looking at the wrestlers. You want to make sure you glance to the timekeeper. You want to make sure you glance to the audience, make sure everyone is engaged. You want to make sure that your positioning is constantly moving, but not too much that distracts from what's going on in the ring. So there's a lot of moving parts in that as well. Now, fortunately with the referee, because you weren't the less of a focus, there's more stuff that you can do to make sure that the wrestlers are actively supported. For example, you would go down to the referee would go down to the wrestlers to make sure they're okay, because we want to make sure even though you get hurt in the ring, we want to make sure you're not hurt in the ring. So that's a very crucial thing for a referee to do. Your priority isn't counting the pinfalls. Your priority is making sure the wrestlers are safe and they are still active. So, for example, someone takes a tumble out of the ring, always make sure you go down there and make sure they're okay. You want to make sure that this match still runs smoothly.
You know, you're talking about the mindset of, it's a three-party system. So let's talk a little bit about the backstage area, going into a match, And a lot of places, especially on the independent scene, you have your promoter, you have your booker, and they're like, okay, such and such, you two got 15 minutes, whatever you need to know, boom. You as a referee, most shows have one, if you're lucky, two referees. So some promoters, they do a 5-match card. Some I've seen do 8. I've seen a 10-match card. If you're a single, referee, that's a long day, and it's a lot of things that you have to remember. So the mindset of the two guys, the boys, coming out with a match and everything, what part do you play in that in designing the match?
So the way that I've worked with in the past is that the referee is the one who helps with the outline of the story. So the wrestlers come up with, the boys, they come up with how they want to do the moves, get their stuff in, make sure that they go to the finale. And they make sure the referee knows where to be positioned for those moments. For example, say the boys come up with a steel chair spot and there's a distraction on the outside, and they make sure the referee is distracted while they get the foreign object and clock them with something. So you make sure that you can actively communicate with all the parties involved. The referee is at epicenter to make sure that story flows smoothly. Because if the referee's not in position for that, it's going to look sloppy. That's why I always say, you are an active performer when you're out in that ring. If you are in that ring, you are automatically a part of the story. You may not feel like you're a big part of the story. Sometimes you're just there to count the pinfalls, but that's an essential part of the story.
Tell me some of the dangers of being a referee, because as being a wrestler, you're in the ring 15, 20 minutes. If you're a headliner, you're in there for an hour. But as a referee, you could spend, like I said, the whole show out there. So what are some of the dangers of being a referee?
So the dangers is sometimes when, can be overzealous, you go too close to one of the wrestlers, and sometimes there's a miscommunication issue. For example, one of the last shows, one of the wrestlers put their foot in the rope, they did not warn me, and they kicked me in the head. So that's why the communication thing is very important. Everyone's on the same page, so we know we're not to be in that position, so they can do what they need to do. But I'd say the main dangers is when something happens to one of the other wrestlers and they are unable to compete and they have to be attended to. Mm-hmm. The hardest part is trying to make sure the break of the flow of the match communicates on the fly to the other wrestler what's going to happen. Either we seek immediate medical attention or we just go to the finish for a nice pinfall to make sure, and then we get help. That's one of the main dangers that concerns me as a referee. The other one is just to make sure you have the stamina and properly hydrated, because you are out there doing a lot of work. It may not feel like you're doing a lot of work in a single moment, but over a period of time, especially refereeing multiple matches, especially back to back to back, in an outdoors environment, for example, it can be very physically demanding, physically taxing, and you wind up with a very awkward tan on your arms and your entire body, and you are dehydrated from the mouth. So that's a common example, but
you speak of the heat. The show that you worked for me, a couple months back, man, that heat was dangerous. I'm standing out there as the promoter, and I'm going back and forth inside. I was AC's out here, and I'm you're out there in black pants, and you're flying everywhere. You're not just, you're not phoning it in. You're actually doing it, and I'm just I could only survive a little bit out there. So what we're going to do right now, we're just going to take a little break, and then we're going to come back, and we're actually going to start talking about you growing up, watching wrestling, and everything so far. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to keep the lights on. So we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. You're watching Who's the Champ? I'll be fine with it. Welcome back in. I am here with Adam Whitten. Dude, we're having us a good show so far. You know, we're talking about, you know, how you became a referee, how you brought in your entertainment side into the business. Now, let's talk about you growing up and being a wrestling fan. So we were talking off camera, you know, you're 30 years old, so which means you were born right in the prime of WCW, ECW, and I'm going to say the WWF during the Attitude Era. So what moment during the Attitude Era, during that time, really solidified you as being a huge wrestling fan?
Oh my God. I think this is gonna be like generic answers. Like it had to been like during the time of the invasion angle.
Wow. Okay.
Because I watched WWF. I didn't watch WCW or ECW as much. I watched it later in life, so like I appreciated more for what they did. But I didn't know anything about WCW. So when around the invasion was happening, that's when like some of my friends like told me about like it's like all these guys are like coming in like they're like there's like 3 shows in one show now. Like I don't know what that means. I'm 6 years old. I'm just like, okay, I'll watch it. And I just see The Rock holding the WCW championship, Stone Cold Steve Austin, WWF championship. For some reason, Stone Cold's on WCW side. I was like very confused. But it was a hodgepodge mess, but I enjoyed that. I like car crashes. So like having that kind of like showcase of like all these different things, like people switching sides. They're part of the alliance now. WCW and ECW, they're friends now.
And you're probably watching that going, well, I'm glad I was a WWE fan because the invasion didn't even showcase the great thing. You know, the invasion comes in, you don't get a Sting, you don't get a Ric Flair, you don't get a Lex Luger. You know, their highest thing, nothing against DDP, but I mean, one of the greatest wrestlers, you bring him as a stalker?
Yeah.
Really?
Like, my opinion, DDP, he's like one of the most underrated guys in history.
Yes.
Just because because like, again, later in life, I watched like WCW stuff because WWF like got the Volt thing, and I watched DDP matches, and I see like the way he performs, his connection with the crowd, as I mentioned before, is incredible. And he started wrestling at the age of 35, and he had a connector right there. It became the top star, one of the top stars of that business. And like when I saw that, like, because I watched a bit like DDP, I thought it was like he was good, like when he was like feuding with the Undertaker. That it was weird. I thought it was like, oh, like an undercard guy is like, but when you could see what he's actually done in the past, like that was a disservice to what he did.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's always viewed as like how WWF treated Christian is like you have like these talented guys, but because like the person in charge that we don't speak his name, like didn't like him because of ridiculous reasons. Like there's like, we're gonna put you in the mid card, pal. You're gonna like it.
You know, you're absolutely right. You know, you were talking about being 6 years old and, you know, seeing the invasion and comparing it to Christian. Because I'm going to be honest, I didn't see anything in Christian until he went to the NWA, went to TNA. And then you saw him in there with a Kurt Angle, like during Kurt Angle's peak. Let's just forget everything. TNA, Kurt Angle, one of the best. You know, him in the ring with Sting, with Jeff Jarrett, AJ Styles. You know, that crop coming up at that time, you got to see what they actually can do. And now you looked at DDP, yeah, you're putting them in there with The Undertaker, but like now it's like the WWE beat WCW. They're like, now it's time to bury them. For people that don't know what burying is, it's like, okay, yes, wrestling's predetermined, but, you know, it's predetermined. It's like, you know, you're gonna lose. So during the invasion, you saw some people did peak. You know, you saw the great out of Rob Van Dam. Yes, you saw the ECW part. If you're an ECW fan, you saw that. But I think out of the invasion angle, Rob Van Dam came out on top of the whole thing. were you a Van Dam fan? Once seeing him in the evasion angle, him and Jeff Hardy at that hardcore ladder match. I mean, still to this day, my back hurts just watching some of that.
Like, Rob Van Dam's a different animal. Like, again, I saw some clips like he did in ECW. It was like, damn, sorry. Some of the stuff that they did was, oh my God. Those chair shots, like, they don't just make contact. They just full on blast through their skulls kind of. And I think the last match I watched was between Rob Van Dam and Sabu. I think it was like a hardcore match. And I saw like one of the ladders, and he launched it, I think, at Sabu, and it just split him wide open. He took it straight on. And he could tell like that's what he wanted to do.
Exactly. They train together, and you'll know this being in the ring. If you're in there with your friends, you hit a little harder.
Yeah.
You're just like, hey, it's fine, it's my buddy. He's not doing it on purpose. So, you talked about the invasion angle. Who were some of your favorite wrestlers growing up? You said you were a WWF fan, so I guess around that time, were Rock, Stone Cold. Were you a Bret Hart fan?
I would say like my favorites. Like I'm gonna go with like the popular one. I would say The Rock was like one of my favorites. Mm-hmm. Stone Cold was also one of my favorites, but like I felt like I was more entertained, like because I'm a comedy guy. So like I like The Rock more than Stone Cold, just because The Rock was like more outwardly funny, especially when like ridicules opponents. Like this is, especially like the promo that he does for the Armageddon pay-per-view lives in my head. Where he just mocks everyone: Kurt Angle, Undertaker, Stone Cold, Rikishi. I did it for The Rock. I did it for the people. Shut your mouth, you thong-wearing fatty. I'm like,
Rock is something else.
Yeah.
Him taking over, and him and Triple H taking over the business now is just what we all wanted growing up. And let's talk about one other thing. Since we're talking about this, WWE going to Netflix, and they just, they released Unreal. And I haven't gone through the whole series yet. I've only got to see 1 or 2 episodes so far. But as someone in the business, even though still new in the business, how do you feel about the curtain being pulled back? Yes, what we're doing here is sort of a shoot interview in some ways, but like now the curtain it's not even pulled back. It's ripped off now. So what, in your opinion, being in the business, what do you think about Unreal?
So the way I view it is similar to like when you see some documentaries like behind the scenes like of like how this produced like movies, television, because the curtain's been open technically since the Attitude Era began, when He Who Must Not Be Named basically said like whatever you see on TV is fiction, but like we're just gonna do like he choose the Attitude Era, and that's when the curtain was like open. But I'm kind of 50-50 of WWE Unreal, but I understand why they do it. Like as a fan, I was like, I don't want to know about this. Like I want to still be engaged because like this is, I don't want to know how you guys book things. I don't want to know what potential plans there'd be. But at the same time, with the landscape of how the internet is and the numerous online reporters of a wrestling community, where it's like Cultaholic or Fightful or Brian Meltzer or it's like Brian or Dave Meltzer, and you see all these people like even if you just look up wrestling, you get a recommendation in your newsfeed on Facebook saying, "Did you hear about this breaking news? There's backstage talk about this person getting pushed, about this person getting fired, this person doing this." You can't escape it at this point. There's always going to be someone trying to go behind the scenes and just try to get that information, and then this community gets upset when it happens or doesn't happen. I'd say because of that, they had to do something like WWE Unreal, because it takes the fun out of it for them. So like you pull back the curtain, but the benefit of it is that they can control what information is spread and which is not, which of it is true, which of it is not. So based on like that, the way I've seen like the way Triple H has been running things, he leans towards that and how he books things. For example, recently when Ron Killings was released from his contract, people were up in arms about it, and they made adamant like we're not going to rehire this person back. Money in the Bank. John Cena was about to use the WWE Championship belt. Masked Man tackles him down, unveils a hoodie. It's Ron the Truth Killings. Big pop. No news that was breaking out about that, and like that was a huge moment, and that wasn't any information given away. So they lean into like the ideas that maybe these people do know the information, but keep one aspect of it hidden away. Another great example. No, it's a controversial topic. This past SummerSlam, Brock Lesnar returned. Nobody knew that was going to happen.
No, everyone was calling Seth Rollins faking the knee injury. I mean, I never would have thought Lesnar, especially he who should not be named, lawsuit, and with him being it, we never thought that he would be there. And just like you said, shocked the world. I jumped as a fan. I hate to say this. My mother, she's pretty much blind, and she was walking into the living room, and I'm just like, oh, okay, great. Yeah, this is a great SummerSlam. And then that music hit. I literally jumped up. The woman almost had a heart attack. She almost hit the floor. So as someone who's known the ins and outs of the business for so long, that right there did it all. But I hate to do this. We're going to take one more break, and then when we come back, we're going to wrap everything up. So stay with us. You're watching Who's the Champ? Oh, man, a half hour is flying by quick. So let me go ahead and bring back in Adam Whitten. So one of the things that we do here on Who's the Champ is, I know it's cliche, but I still love to hear it. Your Mount Rushmore of professional wrestling, any era, anything. Who is your top four?
Oh boy, I'd say like for overall, for like when the industry, for me, my Mount Rushmore, it starts with The Rock because he's encompassed in WWE everything. Stone Cold Steve Austin because he introduced and repopularized like the Attitude Era. Hulk Hogan because obviously he WWE professional wrestling itself wouldn't be anything without them. And for that, it's another popular one, Bruno Sammartino, like old school legend, like everything encompasses back to his work as the Italian Stallion, I think that was, or.
No, the Italian Stallion was someone else, but I know who you're talking about. But yeah. Bruno in the Garden is one of the best things.
It was a major draw.
So, one last thing. Where can people find you on social media and everything?
All right, so my wrestling, Mystery Masked Man Guy. It's on Instagram under Mystery Masked Man Guy. You can find me on that social media. For my performance-based, my dance stuff and acting stuff, you can follow me on 2 accounts, either at Adam Sotero, Sotero, or at asw.dance.
Very nice, very nice. Well, Adam, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. We're definitely going to bring you in. Everyone, thank you for watching. This is Who's the Champ?